Technology reshapes everything: AI, cloud systems, cybersecurity, the future of work. We don't guess here. We research modern love, intimacy, dating dynamics, real human connection in a digital world. We cut through the noise, research-driven conversations, truth delivered hard, wealth building, money psychology, financial freedom, the conversations they don't want you having, engineered with ruthless accuracy. Spirituality, mindset, becoming who you're meant to be. 4 pillars, endless conversations, no filler, just truth.
For about 5 minutes in the year 2000, one company was worth more than Microsoft, more than any company on the planet. Then, 2 years later, it had lost 80% of that value. That company wasn't a flashy consumer brand. It wasn't selling you a phone or a search engine. It was selling the pipes that the internet runs through. Today, we're breaking down Cisco, where it came from, the technologies that made it the invisible backbone of global networking, and how it's now betting everything on AI. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why Cisco matters even if you've never once thought about it, and what its next chapter looks like. Joining me is someone who's gone deep on this story, so let's get into it. Walk me back to the very beginning. Where does Cisco actually start?
So it starts at Stanford University in the early 1980s. 2 computer scientists, Leonard Bosack and Sandy Lerner, who were also married to each other, were working in different departments on campus. And the problem they had was that their 2 departments' computer networks couldn't talk to each other. Like, physically couldn't communicate.
Which sounds almost quaint now, right? Like, of course computers should talk to each other.
Exactly, but in the early 80s, that was genuinely unsolved at scale. So Bosack, along with a Stanford employee named Kirk Laffied, built what they called the Blue Box, a device that could route data across multiple different network protocols. Basically a translator that let incompatible networks understand each other.
Okay, so when you say multi-protocol router, what does that actually mean for someone who isn't deep in networking?
Think of it like this. Imagine every department at Stanford was speaking a different language: French, Spanish, Mandarin. The Blue Box was the interpreter in the middle that could take a message in French and deliver it to someone who only speaks Mandarin. That's what a multi-protocol router does for computer networks. And in 1984, that was genuinely revolutionary.
So they built this thing, and then what? They just decided to start a company?
Pretty much. They founded Cisco Systems in December 1984. And here's a fun detail. The name comes from San Francisco. They even originally wrote it as lowercase Cisco Systems, like a nod to the city. According to Britannica, they took the company name directly from San Francisco.
That's such a scrappy detail. Not Silicon Valley, not Stanford, San Francisco. There's something very street level about that for a company that would eventually become worth $500 billion.
Right? And the early days were genuinely messy. According to Zippia's timeline, in 1986, Bosack and Laffied were actually forced to resign from Stanford, and the university contemplated filing criminal complaints against Cisco for allegedly taking software, hardware designs, and intellectual property.
Wait, criminal complaints? Against the founders of what would become one of the biggest tech companies ever?
Yeah. It didn't go that far, though. By 1987, Cisco had acquired the original license for the router technology from Stanford. And by that same year, they were doing nearly $2 million a month in sales. So whatever the legal drama was, the product was clearly working.
$2 million a month in 1987 is serious money. So how did they go from that to a public company?
They needed cash to keep growing. So in 1988, they turned to Sequoia Capital, the venture capital firm. And this is where things get a little dramatic. Sequoia took effective control of the company and installed John Morgridge as president and CEO. According to Britannica, he managed well but didn't get along with the founders.
Classic VC story. Bring in the professional management, push out the visionaries.
Exactly. Cisco went public on February 16, 1990, with a market cap of $224 million. And then, almost immediately after the IPO, Sandy Lerner was fired. Bosack quit shortly after. The couple who literally built the thing from scratch were out of the company they founded.
That's a brutal ending to the founding chapter. But the company kept going.
It did, and it accelerated. By 1989, before the IPO even, Cisco had revenues of $27 million with just 111 employees and only 3 products. That's an insane revenue per employee ratio. And then through the early 90s, the growth just kept compounding.
So what drove that growth in the 90s? Because that's when the internet was really starting to take off.
Two things, really. First, Cisco developed its Catalyst switch series, which according to the NSC analysis, revolutionized network design by offering higher port density and integrating IP routing directly within the switches. Networks could suddenly be faster and more scalable. Second, they built out their iOS, the Internet Operating System, which became the software that ran on basically all their hardware and allowed for deep customization.
So they weren't just selling boxes, they were selling the software that made the boxes smart.
Exactly. And Fortune magazine actually rated Cisco the second fastest growing company in the United States in 1992. John Chambers joined in 1991 from IBM and Wang Laboratories, and he really stepped up the acquisition pace, buying companies to fill gaps in the product line and essentially offer one-stop networking to customers.
That acquisition strategy is something Cisco became famous for, right? Just buying their way into new markets.
Very much so. In 1996, they acquired Stratacom, a telecom giant, which diversified their portfolio significantly. And then through the late 90s, a whole wave of acquisitions in voice technology helped them move into what the NSC piece describes as the convergence of voice, video, and data services. VOA, Voice over Internet Protocol, was emerging, and Cisco wanted to own that space.
And this is all building toward that insane peak in 2000 where they briefly became the most valuable company in the world.
Yeah. According to Wikipedia, by the end of the dot-com bubble in 2000, Cisco had a market capitalization of $500 billion, surpassing Microsoft as the world's most valuable company. That is a staggering number. And then the bubble burst, and by 2002, they had lost 80% of that value.
80%. That's not a correction, that's a collapse.
It really was. But here's the thing, and this is what I find genuinely interesting about Cisco's story. That crash didn't kill them. It actually forced a kind of discipline that a lot of their dot-com era peers never had to develop because those companies just disappeared entirely.
That's a real counterintuitive point. The near-death experience made them stronger.
And you can see it in where they are today. According to Cisco's own FY25 annual report, they now have over 1 million customers across 150 countries. They serve 99% of the Fortune 500. They have more than 37,000 trusted partners in their global ecosystem. Revenue in 2025 was $56.65 billion.
Okay, so they're massive. But here's what I keep coming back to. Most people have never heard of Cisco. It's not a brand that regular people think about.
That's actually one of the most interesting things about Cisco. Britannica specifically notes that as a company that sold its products mostly to other businesses, Cisco did not become a household name. But that's almost the point. They're the plumbing, they're the infrastructure. Most people use Cisco technology every single day without ever knowing it.
It's like the roads. You don't think about who built the highway, you just drive on it.
That's a perfect analogy. And right now, Cisco is in the middle of a massive pivot. Their FY25 annual report literally positions the company as providing critical infrastructure for the AI era. They completed the integration of Splunk, a major data analytics company, and they're framing themselves as the backbone that AI needs to actually function.
What does that actually look like in practice? What is Cisco doing with AI specifically?
So, according to Forbes, at their Cisco Live conference in 2026, they launched something called Cisco Cloud Control, a centralized AI-enabled management platform for all their products. It includes something called AI Canvas, which manages agentic operations across the network, and Control Studio, a toolkit for building custom AI agents.
Agentic AI on the network level. That's a big swing.
It is. And they also launched something called Live Protect, which, according to Forbes, autonomously protects network software vulnerabilities in real time without shutting down or upgrading hardware and software. And they've committed to full quantum-safe capabilities across the majority of their core portfolio by December 2026.
Quantum safe. So they're already thinking about the next generation of threats, not just the current ones.
Exactly. And the urgency here is real. Cisco released a global study in June 2025 showing that 97% of IT leaders say a modernized network is critical to rolling out AI, IoT, and cloud. And here's the number that really puts it in perspective. One severe network outage per business per year adds up to $160 billion globally.
$160 billion from outages alone.
From just one severe disruption per business per year. and 77% of IT leaders in that study said they had already faced major outages, driven by congestion, cyber attacks, and misconfigurations. So the stakes of getting network infrastructure right are enormous.
And Cisco's security arm is massive too, right? I've seen the Talos name come up a lot.
Cisco Talos is their threat intelligence operation, and according to Cisco's own FY25 purpose report, they process up to 886 billion security events per day. That's not a typo. 886 billion events every single day.
That number is almost incomprehensible. Like, that's the scale of the internet itself.
It really is. And Cisco's 2024 Global Networking Trends Report had a quote from Jonathan Davidson, their EVP of Networking, that I think captures the moment really well. He said, "There is no AI without the network and the data that drives it." That's the bet Cisco is making, that as AI grows, the demand for their infrastructure grows with it.
That's a strong position to be in, but let me push back a little. Is there a risk that Cisco gets disrupted the same way it disrupted others? Like, could someone come along and make their hardware irrelevant?
That's a fair challenge. And Forbes actually noted that Cisco executives at Cisco Live were cautious about the AI boom, saying the company has positioned itself to survive any outcome. The argument is that their portfolio is diverse enough, networking, cybersecurity, observability, collaboration tools, that they're not a one-trick pony dependent on any single trend.
So they've learned from the dot-com era. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That seems to be the philosophy. And their hardware innovation is still serious. Their Silicon One chip, for example, provides throughput from 3.2 terabits per second up to 25.6 terabits per second. Their 8000 series routers scale from 10.8 terabits to 260 terabits. These are the kinds of numbers that keep the internet running at the speeds we expect.
Okay, I want to zoom out for a second because there's a part of the Cisco story that doesn't get talked about enough, the social impact side. Because this isn't just a company selling routers to corporations.
Right, and this is where the story gets genuinely interesting beyond the business metrics. According to a piece from Reframed, there are still 2.6 billion people worldwide without internet access. And Cisco has a program called the Country Digital Acceleration Program, CDA, that has 1,600 projects running across 50 countries specifically aimed at expanding digital access in underserved regions.
1,600 projects across 50 countries. That's not a PR initiative, that's a real operation.
And their Networking Academy, which trains people in networking skills, equipped over 4.7 million learners in just the past year alone, according to that same Reframed piece. Cisco's FY25 purpose report also mentions they've powered AI in Saudi Arabia and driven autonomous vehicle innovation in Italy through the CDA program.
So they're not just building the infrastructure, they're also training the people who will use and maintain it.
Exactly. And on the environmental side, according to Cisco's FY24 purpose report cited by Reframed, 96% of Cisco's global electricity now comes from renewable sources. For a company running data centers and manufacturing hardware at this scale, that's a significant commitment.
It's interesting because Cisco's whole brand is built on trust. Like, governments and corporations trust them with their most sensitive infrastructure. And that trust has to extend to how they operate as a company, too.
That's a really sharp observation. And Cisco leans into that explicitly. Their stated purpose is to power an inclusive future for all. Their FY25 report frames trust as a guiding principle in how they build relationships with governments, businesses, and communities. It's not just a tagline, it's the core of their go-to-market strategy, because without trust, no government or Fortune 500 company is running their critical infrastructure on your hardware.
And that trust has been tested, right? I mean, there was that Supreme Court case involving Cisco and surveillance technology.
Yeah, Britannica's entry on Cisco mentions a Supreme Court case in June 2026, where the court sided with Cisco over Falun Gong in a case involving Chinese surveillance. That's the kind of geopolitical complexity that comes with being the infrastructure layer of the global internet. You're inevitably going to be caught in the middle of some very difficult situations.
That's a whole other dimension of what it means to be the backbone of global networking. It's not just technical, it's political.
Completely. And I think that's actually the most underappreciated part of Cisco's story. They're not just a tech company. They're a geopolitical actor. The decisions they make about where to sell, what to build, and who to partner with have real consequences for how information flows or doesn't flow around the world.
So when you step back from all of this, the founding story, the technologies, the crash, the recovery, the AI pivot, the social programs, what does it all add up to?
Here's what I keep coming back to. Cisco started as two people trying to get their work computers to talk to each other. That's it. That's the whole origin. And from that incredibly mundane problem, they built the infrastructure that the entire internet runs on. Every email, every video call, every AI query, at some point in its journey, it's probably passing through Cisco hardware.
And yet most people couldn't pick the Cisco logo out of a lineup.
Which is almost the point. The best infrastructure is invisible. You don't think about the water pipes until they break. Cisco's job is to make sure you never have to think about the network. And according to their own research, one bad day of thinking about it cost the global economy $160 billion. So the stakes of their invisibility are enormous.
And now they're betting that AI is going to make the network even more critical, not less.
That's the core thesis. As Jonathan Davidson from Cisco put it, there is no AI without the network. Every AI model, every agent, every data-driven workload needs to move data somewhere. And Cisco wants to be the thing it moves through. That's a pretty compelling position to be in as AI scales.
So the company that briefly became the most valuable in the world in 2000 and then lost 80% of its value is now positioning itself as the essential infrastructure for the next great technology wave. That's a full circle story if I've ever heard one.
And what makes it credible this time is that they're not riding hype. They have 40+ years of customer trust, 1 million customers across 150 countries, and they're processing nearly 1 trillion security events a day. The foundation is real. The question is just how big the AI wave gets, and whether Cisco can stay ahead of it.
Here's the thing that really sticks with me from this whole conversation. 2 people at Stanford couldn't get their computers to talk to each other. That frustration, that very specific, very human problem, is what built the plumbing of the modern internet. And now, 40 years later, that same company is trying to make sure AI has the infrastructure it needs to actually work at scale.
And they're training 4.7 million people a year to work with that infrastructure. So it's not just about the hardware or the software, it's about making sure the people who need to use these networks actually can. That's the part of the Cisco story that I think gets lost in the business headlines.
All right, so if you're walking away from this episode with one thing, let it be this. The internet you use every day didn't just appear. It was built piece by piece, protocol by protocol, by companies like Cisco, starting with a box in a Stanford office that 2 people built because they were frustrated their computers couldn't talk. The next time your video call works perfectly, or your AI assistant responds in under a second, there's a very good chance Cisco's infrastructure made that possible. And you'll never see it. That's the whole point. Thanks for listening to Copilot Podcasts. And remember, the most powerful technology is usually the kind you never have to think about.